The Alpha King visited his servant, unannounced, then rejected his chosen Luna. Mara Ellison woke up before the sun every single morning. That was not something she chose. It was simply what her life required. The fire in the great hall needed to be lit before the nobles came down for breakfast. The stone floors needed to be swept before the stewards began their rounds. The candles in the long corridor needed to be replaced before anyone of importance noticed they had burned down to nothing overnight. She did all of this without complaint, without recognition, without anyone looking at her for more than a second before their eyes moved on to something more interesting. Mara was 24 years old. She had brown hair that she kept tied back tightly, hands that were always a little rough from cold water and cleaning soap, and eyes the color of dark honey. She was not the kind of woman that men in the royal pack wrote poems about. She was the kind of woman they asked to refill their wine without looking up from their conversations. She had worked in the eastern wing of the royal pack's great estate for 6 years. She knew every corner of it. She knew which floorboards creaked, which windows let in a draft, and which stone walls trapped heat longest in the winter. She knew the estate the way a person knows a place they have given a great deal of themselves to, without receiving much in return. She did not think of her life as sad. It was simply her life. King Darian Wolfe was not a man who walked the lower corridors of his own estate. He had people for that. Stewards, advisors, guards, servants of every kind. His world was the upper halls, the war rooms, the throne chamber, the grand dining room where he met with council members over long meals that were more strategy than food. He had ruled the northern realm alone since he was 19 years old, when his father passed the crown to him with one last piece of advice. A king who shows softness gives his enemies a door. Darian had taken that advice and built a wall around himself so well constructed that even the people who served him closely were not entirely sure there was anything behind it. He was 31 now, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that people said could end an argument without a single word. His court feared him quietly and respected him loudly, which was exactly how he preferred it. The one thing his court had been waiting for, quietly, eagerly, with great anticipation, was his bonding ceremony. The elder council had selected his Luna more than a year ago. Her name was Lady Seraphine Ashford. She came from one of the oldest bloodlines in the region. She had been educated in 3 kingdoms, and she carried herself with the kind of grace that made every room feel like a stage she was performing on. She was beautiful. She was intelligent. She was precisely the right political choice. Darian did not feel anything particular when he was near her, but he had told himself that was acceptable. He was not marrying for feeling. He was marrying for the pack, for the alliances, for the stability that the elder council had spent months negotiating. The ceremony was planned. The guests were invited. Everything was moving forward exactly as it was supposed to. Then came the night he walked down the wrong corridor. He had been restless. That was the only explanation he could give himself afterward. He had finished his evening meetings early, dismissed his advisors, and found himself wandering without a destination through the quieter parts of the estate. He told himself he was inspecting the property, checking on things. A king had every right to walk through his own halls. He turned a corner near the eastern wing, a part of the estate he had not visited in years, and he stopped. There was a young woman kneeling on the floor in front of the door to his private study, scrubbing the stone threshold with a brush. She had not heard him come. She was working quietly, steadily, and she was humming something under her breath. A soft melody, an old tune that he had not heard in a very long time. It was the lullaby his mother used to sing. He stood very still. Something moved inside him. Not a thought, not a decision, but something older than both of those things. His wolf, which had been quiet and settled for years, lifted its head as if it had just caught a scent it had been searching for, without knowing it was searching. The woman looked up. Their eyes met. She scrambled immediately to her feet, nearly dropping her brush, color rushing into her face. "Your Majesty, I am so sorry. I did not hear you. I will move at once. Stay." The word came out before he had decided to say it. She froze. He looked at her for a long moment, this woman with her tied-back hair, and her rough hands, and her honey-colored eyes wide with alarm, and he felt something he had no name for, press firmly against the inside of his chest. "What is your name?" he asked. She blinked. No one of his rank had ever asked her that. "Mara," she said quietly. "Mara Ellison, Your Majesty. I work the Eastern Wing." He nodded slowly. Then, because he had no idea what else to do with the feeling that was currently making it difficult to think clearly, he turned and walked away. He came back the next night. He told himself he was simply walking the corridors again, inspecting things. It had nothing to do with the young woman from the Eastern Wing. She was there. She was cleaning the window at the end of the hall, standing on the tips of her toes to reach the upper corner of the glass, her breath fogging faintly in the cold air. He watched her for a moment before she noticed him. When she did, she lowered herself quickly and dipped her head. "Your Majesty." "Carry on," he said. She turned back to the window. He stood at the end of the corridor for longer than any reasonable inspection of the hall required. He came back the night after that, and the one after that. By the end of the second week, he had learned things about Mara Ellison that he had not intentionally set out to learn. He had learned that she apologized to the flowers she accidentally knocked from the windowsill, whispering a quiet sorry to them as she set them right. He had learned that she worked without stopping but never looked hurried. He had learned that she sometimes paused at the window at the far end of the corridor and looked out at the night sky for just a moment. Not long, never long, as if she was allowing herself a small and private thing before returning to work. He did not know what to do with any of this information. What he did know, what his wolf had been telling him with increasing certainty since the first night, was that Mara Ellison was his true mate. By the third week, he spoke to her directly. Not as a king addresses a servant. He walked up to her while she was sorting linens at the end of the hall, and he said her name, and when she turned to face him, he asked her how long she had worked in the Eastern Wing. She stared at him for a moment, as if he had asked her something in a foreign language. "6 years, Your Majesty," she said carefully. "Do you enjoy the work?" Another pause. She seemed to be checking the question for hidden meaning, trying to understand what the correct answer was supposed to be. "I find it honest work," she said finally, which was the truest answer she could give. He looked at her steadily. "That is a careful answer." "I am a careful person, Your Majesty." Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. She noticed it. She looked away. Lady Seraphine Ashford noticed things too. She had not built herself into the woman she was by missing details. She had an eye for the small things, the way a man's posture changed, the direction his attention moved, the corridors he walked when he thought no one of importance was watching. She had her people in the lower halls, she always did. When the reports reached her that the king had been seen in the Eastern Wing multiple times in the past weeks, standing in corridors where a servant girl worked, she received the information without any visible reaction. She set down her pen, folded her hands, and sat with it for a long moment. Then she requested a private meeting with the king. She was composed when she met with him. She did not raise her voice. She was far too intelligent for that. She reminded him, in the measured tones of someone who had rehearsed every word, of the political agreements that rested on their bonding ceremony. She named the alliances. She named the families. She named the consequences, carefully and completely, of any disruption to the arrangement. She did not once mention Mara by name. She did not plead. She did not threaten with heat. She threatened with precision, the way a very sharp and very cold instrument does what it is designed to do without any drama at all. Darian listened to every word. Then he thanked her for her time and walked out. He found Mara that same evening. She was at the far window, the one she always paused at, looking out at the night sky. She did not hear him approach this time either, and for a moment, he simply stood a few feet behind her, watching her look at the stars with that small, private expression she wore when she thought no one could see her. "Mara." She turned. She read something in his face immediately and went still. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear it without apologizing or looking at the floor." She straightened. She kept her eyes on his. It took visible effort. He told her the truth, all of it, what he had felt from the first night, what his wolf had known, what he was going to do about it. She did not speak for a long time after he finished. "I am a servant," she said at last. Her voice was steady, but only just. I clean your floors, your majesty. I replace your candles. I am no one. You are my mate, he said simply. That is not something I choose. It is something that is true. Her eyes filled. She turned her face away. Look at me, he said. Not a command, a request. Quiet and careful. The kind of voice she had not expected from him. She looked at him. I am not asking you to trust me today, he said. I am asking you to know that what I am about to do, I am doing because it is right, not because it is easy. 3 days before the ceremony, King Darian Wolfe walked into the great hall and summoned the elder council. They gathered quickly, sensing weight in the summons. 7 elder wolves around a long stone table, and the king at the head of it, standing rather than sitting. Lady Seraphine was present as well, informed in advance, her hands folded in her lap, and her face entirely unreadable. Darian did not make a speech. He was not a man who dressed difficult things in decoration. He told them the truth. His wolf had found his true mate. He was formally rejecting the bonding arrangement with Lady Seraphine. He understood the political consequences, and he would address them individually and directly with each affected party. The silence that followed was the loudest silence the great hall had ever held. The eldest council member spoke first, his voice tight with control. Your Majesty, the arrangements will be renegotiated, Darian said. I will not be the first king to do so. I will not be the last. Another elder. And who is this supposed true mate? Her name is Mara Ellison, he said. She works in the eastern wing of this estate. She has worked here for 6 years. You have walked past her in these halls and not once thought to learn her name. No one said anything to that. Lady Seraphine rose from her chair. Every eye went to her. She stood for a moment, looking at the king across the long table, and if there was something moving beneath her composed exterior, she did not allow a single trace of it to reach her face. She inclined her head once, a small, dignified gesture, and she walked out of the hall. No one stopped her. No one spoke until the sound of her footsteps faded completely. Darian went to Mara himself that evening. He did not send a messenger. He did not have a steward inform her. He walked down to the eastern wing, where the corridors smelled like cleaning soap and old wood, and he stood in front of the door to her small room and knocked. She opened it after a moment. She was still in her work clothes. She had clearly not been expecting anyone, and the sight of him standing there, the king, in the servant corridor, at her door, made her grip the doorframe. It is done, he said. She looked at him for a long time. Are you certain, she asked. Not of me, of what this costs you. I am certain, he said. Why, she asked. The word came out soft and honest, the way she always was. You had everything arranged, a Luna who was educated and powerful, and right for the position in every way the council could measure. You had a clean, easy path in front of you. Why would you? Because none of it was real, he said. He said it quietly. I have been doing what is correct for 12 years. I have been ruling and managing and calculating, and then I turned a corner 3 weeks ago and heard a song I had not heard since my mother was alive, and I felt something real for the first time in longer than I can tell you. She did not respond for a moment. Her eyes were bright. What do you feel right now? She asked. He considered the question with the same seriousness he gave everything. Uncertain, he admitted. For the first time in a long time. Something in her face softened completely at that, not at his power, or his decision, or the grand gesture of what he had walked away from, but at the honesty of that one small word. She stepped back from the doorway and let him in. The room was small. There was a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a single candle burning on the windowsill. Outside, the estate was surely alive with whispers and reactions, and the beginning of what would be a long and complicated adjustment to everything he had just changed. But none of that had arrived yet. He sat down at the small table. She sat across from him. The candle burned between them, steady and quiet. They talked for a long time that night, about simple things at first, then about real things. He told her about his father. She told him about the lullaby, that she had learned it years ago from an older servant who had once worked in the upper halls, who had heard the former queen sing it, and carried the melody down to the lower corridors where it eventually found Mara. He was quiet for a long time after she told him that. That song traveled a long way to reach you, he said finally. Maybe it was supposed to, she said. He looked at her across the small table, in the quiet candlelight, in the room that smelled like soap and old wood. For the first time in 12 years, King Darian Wolfe did not feel like a king managing a kingdom. He felt like a man who had finally found where he was supposed to be. End of story.